Beast Wars had some of the most memorable villains in Transformers history, from scheming masterminds to fanatically loyal soldiers. But there's one Predacon who outlasted them all through sheer pathetic survival instinct. So let's break down every major Predacon from the series, ranked by their ambition to overthrow Megatron, starting with the one who never even tried. Waspinator. Waspinator is the running joke of Beast Wars. He appears in 37 of the show's 52 episodes, making him one of the most frequent Predacons, and he loses nearly every fight. He gets blown up, dismembered, vaporized, and reassembled so many times the show stops treating it as dramatic and starts treating it as Tuesday. His signature phrase, "yes," became an internet meme during the 2000s Beast Wars revival, which honestly makes sense. He's the most unkillable character in a show about war machines, purely because nobody takes him seriously enough to finish him off. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a fan theory that Waspinator is deliberately bumbling, deliberately pathetic, because the moment he becomes a threat is the moment Megatron eliminates him. Terror Sword tries to overthrow Megatron and gets punished. Tarantula schemes and gets monitored. Waspinator just survives. He's too expendable to fear, which makes him the smartest one in the room without trying. And if you think one broken wasp is bad, wait until you meet the Predacon who thought Megatron was a literal god. Inferno. Inferno is the ant who treats Megatron like a living deity, and that's not hyperbole. He literally refers to him as the royalty for most of the series. Not boss, not leader, but the royalty, like he's addressing an ancient god king who could smite him for breathing wrong. And here's the thing, that fanaticism makes him paradoxically the most dangerous Predacon on the roster, because he has zero survival instinct. Terrorsaur schemes, Tarantulas manipulates, Black Arachnia plays both sides. Inferno just obeys. Tell him to walk into a lava pit, he'll ask if you want him to do a backflip on the way down. But wait, it gets weirder. His programming is completely scrambled. He thinks he's defending a colony, refers to the Predacon base as the colony, and treats any threat to it like you just kicked over his anthill. Which you did, technically, because he literally emerged from a damaged stasis pod next to an actual anthill and imprinted on it. The show just runs with this. He's out there treating military operations like pest control, calling intruders Insecticons while firing missiles at maximum range. And yet, in later episodes, cracks start showing. He begins developing individual thoughts, tiny flickers of personality that weren't there before, which is somehow more unsettling than the blind loyalty, because it suggests he was always capable of independent thinking and just chose fanaticism instead. At least he's predictable. Unlike Scorponok, who's quiet enough to make you wonder what he's actually planning. Scorponok is the enforcer who doesn't need dialogue because his design does all the talking. He's a scorpion-based Predacon with a segmented tail, armored carapace, and a combat style built entirely around melee strikes and tail attacks. Pure predatory efficiency. He looks more dangerous than half the roster combined, and yet he gets almost zero individual episode focus. He's the muscle. That's it. He appears primarily as a physical enforcer rather than a strategist, which makes sense when you look at how Megatron uses him. Need someone intimidated? Send Scorponok. Need a door smashed? Scorponok. Need a tactical discussion about long-term faction goals? Literally anyone else. His role is to hit things, and he's very good at hitting things, but the series treats him like a prop with legs rather than a character with ambitions. Later, he attempts a transmetal upgrade by dunking himself in lava, which, you know, doesn't go well. He dies during the process, becoming one of the few Predacons to get killed off mid-series not through combat, but through sheer ambition meeting poor execution. The show just moves on like nothing happened. Here's the thing though, some fans think his quiet nature wasn't simplicity, it was strategy. The theory goes that Scorponok was smarter than he let on, and his death robbed the series of a potentially complex character. Whether that's true or just wishful thinking for an underused character, we'll never know, but at least he went out swinging for an upgrade, unlike the Predacon who's about to show up and make things significantly more complicated. Ravage. Ravage was a G1 icon, Soundwave's most loyal cassette, a Decepticon legend, and in Beast Wars, he gets basically nothing. He shows up as a Jaguar-based Predacon with a sleek, speed-focused design, gets assigned recon missions because that's what cats do apparently, and then just sort of exists in the background. He never breaks into the primary cast, he barely speaks. He's more tactical prop than character. You could remove him from half his episodes and nobody would notice. And here's the thing, nobody really knows knows why. Some fans think it was a deliberate creative choice, keeping him as pure function over personality to contrast the chattier Predacons. Others think it's a production limitation, like maybe they just didn't have time to develop him properly, or his model was expensive to animate. The evidence is too thin to say for sure, but the irony is perfect. Ravage is a stealth operative, so the show makes him so stealthy he vanishes from relevance entirely. His underutilization is either brilliant meta commentary or a complete waste of a legacy character, and 16 years later we still don't have a clear answer. At least he stayed loyal, unlike the next guy who combined two animals and somehow ended up with 0 brain cells. Quick Strike, a Scorpion Cobra fuser, sounds like someone lost a bet with the character design department, but Quick Strike is exactly what happens when Megatron decides the Predacon roster has gotten too predictable and injects pure chaos into the mix. He shows up late in season 3, around episode 42, and immediately makes everyone's life worse. Here's the thing, Quick Strike combines the worst traits of both animals. He's got the territorial aggression of a scorpion and the hair trigger striking instinct of a cobra. This doesn't create balance. It creates a walking liability who attacks first and thinks never. He can't follow sophisticated orders because he doesn't process information beyond that thing looks like a threat, let me bite it. And Megatron knows this. The question fans debate is whether Quick Strike's recruitment was desperation or calculation. Did Megatron need warm bodies that badly, or was he deliberately weaponizing unpredictability? Because here's what Quick Strike actually does well. He creates chaos in situations where Megatron's strategic opponents expect logic. You can't predict what Quick Strike will do because Quick Strike doesn't know what Quick Strike will do, but that cuts both ways. He's as likely to ruin a Predacon operation as he is to accidentally succeed through sheer aggression. Fans are split on whether he's an underrated combat asset or just another mouth to feed. The truth is probably both. At least Quick Strike is honest about his limitations. Unlike the next Predacon, who was literally programmed to betray everyone, Dinobot 2. Megatron literally rebuilt a traitor. Let that sink in for a second. The most infamous defector in Predacon history. The guy who turned on them in season 1 and spent 2 seasons fighting alongside the Maximals. And Megatron's response to needing another commander is, you know what? Let's bring him back. Here's where it gets complicated. Dinobot 2 isn't exactly a resurrection. He's a transmetal reconstruction with partial programming from the original, which sounds fine until you realize he's got fragmented memories of being a Maximal fighting against everything his current programming tells him to do. He's a Frankenstein's monster with an identity crisis. Half his brain says serve Megatron, the other half remembers dying for honor alongside Optimus Primal. The philosophical debate writes itself. Is this the same Dinobot? The consensus among fans is split down the middle. Some argue he's an entirely new entity wearing a dead hero's face. Others point to the retained memories as proof of continuity. Either way, the tragedy is identical. He's a warrior torn between programming and memory, loyalty and instinct, and he can't reconcile either. But here's the kicker. Dinobot 2's very existence proves how desperate Megatron's gotten. You don't rebuild your most famous traitor unless you're running out of options. You especially don't do it when that traitor's final act was saving the Maximals. At least Dinobot 2 struggles with an identity, unlike the next Predacon who has 0 identity beyond destruction and is kept on a literal leash. Rampage, Megatron's greatest weapon isn't a gun, it's a living apocalypse on a leash. And the only thing stopping Rampage from eating the entire Predacon faction is a spark restraint the size of a thumb drive. Here's the thing, Rampage wasn't recruited, he was captured, bound, chained to Megatron's will through technology because loyalty was never an option. This isn't a soldier following orders. This is a parasitic alien entity that predates the Predacon expedition, hardwired for chaos and destruction, kept in check by the fact that Megatron literally holds his spark hostage. Remove that restraint and Rampage doesn't join the rebellion. He becomes the extinction event. What makes him terrifying is that he doesn't want what anyone else wants. Terrorsaur schemes for the throne. Black Arachnia manipulates for power. Rampage just wants to consume, to destroy, to spread entropy like it's his job, because for him, it is. His ambition operates on a completely different axis. He's not climbing the hierarchy. He's trying to burn the whole structure down, one spark at a time. And when Megatron does unleash him, Rampage exceeds almost every other Predacon in raw capability. The only reason he's not at the top of this list is because he's playing an entirely different game, which raises the question, is Rampage even ambitious, or is he just compelled? Fans still debate whether his actions constitute drive or instinct, whether he belongs on the loyalty to ambition spectrum at all, or if he's something outside it entirely. At least Rampage's goals are comprehensible, unlike Tarantula's, whose agenda operates on an entirely different timeline. Tarantulas. Tarantulas isn't just scheming against Megatron, he's scheming against the entire concept of the Predacon faction. Here's the thing, Tarantulas is a Tripredacus council agent with multiple agendas running simultaneously. While every other Predacon is fighting over who gets to rule Cybertron, Tarantulas is working on projects that would make the war itself irrelevant. Those alien structures scattered across prehistoric Earth, not just ancient ruins. His research facilities for tampering with Vok technology. And here's where it gets weird. Tarantulas maintains hidden agendas for multiple seasons, playing along with Megatron's orders while actively pursuing goals that would render the entire war meaningless. His ambition isn't about climbing the Predacon hierarchy, it's about rewriting the timeline by destroying the Ark. He doesn't want to conquer Cybertron, he wants to alter history so none of this matters. The community debate around Tarantulas centers on whether he's genuinely loyal to anything or if every alliance is purely transactional. Turns out it's the latter. He uses Megatron as temporary muscle while working toward endgames nobody else can even comprehend. His loyalty to the Tripredacus Council lasts exactly as long as they don't interfere with his personal experiments with alien technology, which makes him the conspiracy thriller villain in a show about giant robots. He's not trying to overthrow the boss, he's trying to rewrite reality itself. At least Tarantulas has an actual plan. Unlike the next Predacon who just schemes for survival, Black Arachnia, the only Predacon who plays everyone and somehow makes it work. Black Arachnia's entire strategy boils down to one principle: trust nobody, manipulate everybody, survive at all costs, and it works. She's not loyal to the Predacons. She's not loyal to the Maximals when she eventually switches sides. She's loyal to herself, and that clarity of purpose makes her more dangerous than half the roster combined. Here's the thing, Black Arachnia uses seduction and emotional manipulation as primary weapons, which is controversial in modern analysis, but it's undeniable in the source material. She plays Megatron, plays the Maximals, plays Tarantulas, and somehow walks away from every interaction with more leverage than she started with. She's not overpowering anyone, she's reading the room, finding the angle, and exploiting it before anyone realizes they've been played. But here's her actual superpower. Black Arachnia treats Megatron like a flawed individual instead of an infallible leader, and that gives her a tactical advantage nobody else has. She understands his paranoia, his vanity, his ambition, and she uses all of it. When she officially switches to the Maximals in Season 3 after Megatron attempts to alter history, it's not betrayal, it's strategic repositioning. When self-preservation overrides faction loyalty, that's not weakness, that's clarity. And if you think playing both sides makes you clever, wait until you meet the Predacon who tried to overthrow Megatron so many times it became a running joke, Terrorsaur. Terrorsaur attempts to overthrow Megatron multiple times throughout Beast Wars. And before you write him off as the show's comic relief, understand this: his failures aren't because he's incompetent, they're because Megatron's paranoia is as refined as Terrorsaur's ambition. Here's the thing, Terrorsaur actually has the skills. He's a competent fighter with aerial superiority, tactical awareness, and legitimate strategic thinking. The problem is he's playing chess against someone who designed the board. Every coup he launches, Megatron sees it coming 3 moves in advance. Not because Terrorsaur telegraphs his intentions, but because Megatron assumes everyone is constantly plotting against him. And when you assume everyone's a traitor, you're right about Terrorsaur every single time. His career ends in episode 26, Aftermath, when a quantum surge hits the planet. Lava erupts, the ground cracks open, and Terrorsaur falls straight into it. No dramatic final stand, no transmetal upgrade to save him, just molten rock and permanent deletion. After all that scheming, all that ambition, he gets taken out by geological activity, which is, not the legacy he was going for. The fandom split on whether to respect him or pity him. Some see a tragic figure constantly clawing at a throne he'll never reach. Others see a walking punchline who doesn't realize the joke's on him. Either way, Terrorsaur represents ambition without the one thing that matters: timing. He wants the crown now, but Megatron's already wargamed every scenario where someone tries to take it. At least Terrorsaur keeps his schemes internal, unlike the next group who operate on an entirely different level of strategic patience. Tripredacus. Here's the thing about Tripredacus, nobody actually knows what it is, and that's kind of the point. It might be a character, it might be an organization, it might be an ancient Cybertronian entity that existed before the Predacons even had a name. The series references it maybe once or twice, never shows it directly, and leaves the entire concept hanging in the air like a threat that never materializes. But the fact that Megatron, who treats every other Predacon like disposable muscle, seems genuinely concerned about Tripredacus tells you everything you need to know know about its importance. Here's what we can actually confirm. Tripredacus represents something beyond the Beast Wars conflict itself. It's connected to Cybertron's past in ways the show never explains. Some fans think it's a callback to G1 continuity. Others think it's a council, not a character. Others think it's something even weirder, some ancient force that predates the Autobot-Decepticon war entirely. There's no consensus because the show gives us almost nothing to work with, and that's what makes it terrifying. Megatron schemes, Tarantulas hides agendas, Terrorsaur launches coups, but Tripredacus? It just exists, somewhere, doing something, powerful enough that even Megatron has to acknowledge it. That's the kind of wildcard that changes everything without ever appearing on screen, which brings us to the one Predacon who doesn't need to worry about Tripredacus, because he's too busy being the center of the entire conflict, Megatron. Megatron isn't just the leader of the Predacons, he's the architect of a plan that transcends the entire Beast Wars conflict. While every other Predacon is fighting Maximals or scheming for rank, Megatron is playing a completely different game. His goal isn't winning the war, it's restoring the Decepticon Empire on Cybertron. The Golden Disc, the resource gathering, the transmetal upgrades, everything serves a vision none of his subordinates fully understand. And here's the thing, Megatron is either a tactical genius or just surrounded by complete morons. 52 episodes, 3 seasons. He survives coup after coup from Terrorsaur, betrayal after betrayal from Tarantulas, and the general incompetence of Waspinator somehow not getting everyone killed. His transmetal form around episode 33 cements his technological dominance, but the real question is whether he earned that position through brilliance or just paranoia that keeps everyone else in check, because Megatron's paranoia is both his greatest strength and his fatal flaw. It prevents anyone from getting close enough to overthrow him, but it also means he can never fully trust competent allies like Black Arachnia or leverage Rampage's destructive potential without restraints. He adapts when plans fail, demonstrating long-term strategic thinking that extends beyond immediate victory. But adaptation born from paranoia isn't the same as vision born from confidence. The fandom has debated this for decades. Is Megatron a mastermind who would have succeeded with better subordinates? Or is he a tyrant whose leadership style guarantees he only attracts schemers and idiots? The Golden Disc suggests he knew something about Cybertron's future that justified every risk. But the fact that he needed to rely on Predacons who couldn't stop backstabbing each other for 5 minutes suggests maybe the problem wasn't the subordinates. Either way, Megatron remains the ultimate Predacon, the tyrant lizard with a galactic vision. Every other name on this list was a pawn in a game they never fully understood. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.